the paper mill, Pixel, huge event locally since April 15th.
Yeah.
And you've been a part of, the commissioners have been a part of the paper mill response team, Pixel response team. What can you tell about how things are going?
Yeah, sure. So it has been, in many ways, and I'm sure the folks who are directly impacted by this would agree, a worst case scenario, right? A nightmare. My family came to Ross County for employment at the paper mill. My dad worked there for 20 years. There's that emotional end of it being that I feel, and I know other residents feel. There's the real element of 800 plus people, probably when you look at all the other industry that supports it, over $1,000 billion of economic impact loss to our community. That's a stark reality that we're looking at right now. And at the same time, what I've seen in this, though, is that there's been excellent collaboration and engagement from all of the stakeholders in our community. We have a weekly team that has been meeting since whatever that first Monday was following the announcement. I think the announcement came on a Tuesday, and so we met the following Monday with our what we call the Pixel response team. Part of that you've already seen kind of roll out, and a lot of that was a collaboration between Job and Family Services and the Chamber of Commerce and all the other stakeholders around garnering resources and information for employees. There's been engagement that's been very public with Senator Moreno's office and other elected officials at the federal and state level, and that has been, that's been great. That's been excellent. One of the challenges that we've experienced has been, HIG, Pixel making a public statement or a good faith gesture toward us in engaging with us, and then reneging on that within days or weeks or some amount of time, because we did. I mean, there was no question that Pixel made a public statement that they were going to stay open till the end of the year. We knew pretty well within a few weeks that wasn't aligning with, their statements weren't aligning with what we saw reality to be. We did end up, I do think that effort delayed the closure from what I've seen, in that, now folks are still there and going to be being paid until next week, but it's still an incredibly difficult situation for anyone and for the community to experience. But
the current date is August 10th.
Yes, that's
from what I've seen on all the posts on Facebook, that the mill processes are pretty much, they've closed down. They ran their last rolls of paper, and so it's going to be maintenance and security for however long it takes for whatever to happen.
Yes, and it's important to know, and another outcome of our Pixel response was, the letter to HIG and Pixel that went out probably about a month ago, that had co-signers, I think,
from the chamber, from South Valley Forward.
Yes.
2,200 signatures.
2,200 signatures, and those are all folks who are impacted by the paper mill in some way, whether they live in the community, whether they're former employees of the paper mill, current employees. That was another outcome of that. But it's important for folks to know, I think, that the local government and local economic development, all of our stakeholder team, is not directly at the table with HIG, not because we don't want to be, but this site here in Chillicothe is privately owned, and the owners retain their private property rights to make a private sale, and so we've done our best to influence that. We know that there are offers on the table from other industrial manufacturers to purchase that site from HIG. We know that there's other purchasers. We don't know what HIG and Pixel will do with the site. What we hope is that we will have every opportunity to support a productive use for that. But the risk from our point of view is that we don't have any element of control over that. You referenced my career experience in Pickaway County earlier, and when I was in Pickaway County, I was still working with sites that had been or hadn't been remediated from closures that happened 10, 20 years before. The RCA building and site back behind where the Walmart is in Circleville was one of those, and the former GE site. Former GE site a lot of this has been resolved since my time there, but that's what I personally view as a example of worst case scenario that I hope doesn't happen with the paper mill, and that is, in that case, the GE shuttered and mothballed the site, and no one was able to touch it for a decade or so, and so that doesn't allow us the opportunity to repurpose that, to retain any of the utility capacities, to make that a productive use. So
sort of a zombie site like the Wherever.
Yes. Yeah.
Which has its own pollution problems, which have come up in the local news recently.
Yeah, there has been a lot of that in the local news. In the Columbus News, NBC4 covered a story on that. We've been engaged very closely with Ohio EPA. I'm not prepared to give any sort of definitive statements on that story that happened last week. I've talked with the Ohio EPA when that story first ran, and actually we collectively, a group of local stakeholders, had an informational meeting with the Ohio EPA, not specific to that issue, but that issue was mentioned, and the Ohio EPA is very engaged with Pixel and any potential purchasers of the site to ensure that any environmental concerns are appropriately addressed. But I would defer to Ohio EPA on the specifics on that. Yeah.
Well, with Wherever, there's a groundwater contamination which has been held at bay because the paper mill has been pulling water out for paper production. Mm-hmm. So with the paper mill being shut down, that water pollution could be shifting around, moving.
Yes, and those are the concerns that we did discuss with Ohio EPA. I could be glad to follow up with some sort of information, a statement from Ohio EPA, if that would be helpful to you. Like I said, I'm not the expert. What I do know is that the Ohio EPA is very engaged with Pixel. They've been engaged since they've been engaged with every owner of that site about this issue and in maintaining proper mitigation and defining obligations for mitigation. I feel confident, based upon what I've heard from the Ohio EPA, that Pixel leaving is not going to allow them to forfeit their obligation to mitigate environmental concerns that are created from the paper mill or obligations that they've already made. So
it's not going to become a zombie site.
Yeah, I feel that it's something that I'm certainly going to monitor and continue to engage with the Ohio EPA, but they're really the ones who have the jurisdiction over that and the ones that we should be engaged in. And if there is folks that need to be held accountable, that's of course we'll be engaged in that, but the first step in understanding that, I think, falls under the jurisdiction of Ohio EPA, who we're collaborating with.
And I've chronicled some of the earlier involvement in the 1970s with the scrubbers for the smokestack.
Yeah.
Going into Chillicothe Gazette articles, and I've been posting them on my Facebook page as part of the plant's history.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed that coverage, actually, and I think a lot of people have, yeah.
But there's also the memorandum of understanding with Pixel that it's not technically not legally binding, but they've said that they will do mitigation needed, they will do demolitions that are needed on the site.
Yeah. I think the devil's in the details on all of that.